welcome to another episode of Life Beyond Clinical Practice. Today, I am delighted to have with me Sonja Cronjé, who is an imposter syndrome coach who helps health professionals, particularly early career medical specialists, navigate the interconnected challenges of self-doubt, overwhelm, burnout, career transitions, leadership development, as well as work-life harmony. And I think those are themes that resonate with so many health professionals. So I know that what Sonja shares with us today will really be insightful for you, and you'll be able to take home some nuggets, hopefully help you on your career journey. So as a former clinical professional herself, Sonja has pivoted roles several times and understands intimately what it means to step into new territory. So she is an authority in this space. She also understands how to take on a different professional identity. And when you pivot, that is it. And so she's here today to share with us her experience and insight from the work she's currently doing. Welcome, Sonja. That was quite a resume, and I know you've got a wealth of experience to share with the audience today. So welcome to the podcast. I know this is your first time, and yeah, congratulations on making your podcast debut today. So yeah, how do you feel about that?
Oh, thank you so much, Diane. It is an absolute exciting privilege to be here. And what a full circle moment as well. When I think back to the time we met in South Africa decades ago now, I never imagined that we'd be reconnecting like this. You know, at opposite ends of the world, talking about career pivots. Who would have thought? So thank you for having me. It's wonderful to have my first podcast debut with you.
Wonderful. And for the benefits of the audience, Sonja and I are both come from an optometry background. And while we didn't know each other initially as optometrists, we met later in a different phase of our careers when we were working in sort of international development and global eye health. And that's where our paths initially connected some almost 20 years ago. Don't want to give away our ages. And then, of course, parted ways when our careers took different trajectories, and now, as Sonja says, come full circle. And that to me speaks of the power of a strong network, building those strong relationships early in your career. Sonja, what do you say about that?
Absolutely, Diane. I was actually thinking when you were asking me to talk about my professional background that all the successful pivots and all the opportunities I had were all from networking and relationships.
Totally.
So I could not agree more. That is essential.
Awesome. Well, now's your chance to really tell the audience a little bit about your background and sort of the real rich career trajectory you've had, the different paths you've taken, and what has led you to your current role as an imposter syndrome practitioner.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I started my career as an optometrist in South Africa. And gosh, that was more than 3 decades ago now, hard to believe. And not long after graduating, I began teaching contact lenses at the University of Johannesburg. And looking back, I can see I was experiencing imposter syndrome even then, though I didn't know the name for it at the time. But I often felt like I was just one step ahead of my students, and that any day they would realize that I wasn't really good enough to be teaching at the university. I eventually became the head of the optometry department, and I was the youngest person at the time to ever hold that role. And of course, that triggered my imposter feelings all over again.
Yeah.
And around the same time, I was also doing volunteer work for an international organization focused on raising the standards of contact lens education. And their head office was in Sydney. And after a few years of doing volunteer work for them, they offered me a full-time role as Director of Education, which is what brought me to Australia more than 20 years ago now.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an incredible opportunity, but surprise, surprise, moving to a new country and stepping into this global role triggered those imposter feelings again.
Oh my goodness.
And the person who recruited me was a world-famous professor of optometry, you know, someone whose work I had studied in my contact lens textbooks. So in my early years in Australia, I was constantly worrying that he would regret asking me to move over here, that he would think, oh, she's not actually as good as I thought she was. And like many people with imposter syndrome, I tried to cope by overworking, pushing myself to try and do everything perfectly to prove that I belonged. And inevitably, that
Understood.
just
Yeah.
led to burnout and obviously made my performance worse, but, I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't see it at the time. And a few years later, I joined another not for profit, the one that you and I both worked for. And this time it was focused on eliminating avoidable blindness, international development. And that was really meaningful, purposeful work,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
given that we know around 80% of blindness is preventable or treatable. But the workload was intense. I was working crazy 12, 14-hour days, obviously demands I was also putting on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of international travel, often in challenging conditions, and eventually I burnt out again. And this time quite badly because I picked up a serious lung infection on one of my overseas trips. So that was another turning point in my career. I knew I needed to pivot again. And clinical practice wasn't an option for me. I never registered in Australia, nor did I want to. But I still wanted to stay in healthcare.
Right.
So I moved into a leadership role with a specialist medical college here in Sydney. And actually, since then, I've worked across 3 medical colleges. And
That's
that's given
amazing.
me, yeah, it's given me a really good understanding of the challenges that clinicians face outside of clinical work. The leadership demands, constant expectations, the juggling act when you move up in medicine.
Oh, for sure.
And
Mm.
later I became CEO of a national professional association in cancer care. So completely away from optometry.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. But that role, for various reasons, just wasn't the right fit for me. And I found myself ready for another pivot. And because coaching had been so valuable to me in my own leadership journey, I decided to qualify as a coach myself. So, how did I find my way into imposter syndrome coaching as
Right.
an former recovering imposter myself? um, about 5 years ago, as I qualified for my coaching qualification, I was involved in creating a leadership program for early career medical specialists here in Sydney. And I actually still coach and teach in that program now. And it's since expanded to include nurses, midwives, and allied health professionals.
Mm.
And over hundreds of hours of coaching, Diane, I've seen the same themes come up
Patterns.
again and
Yeah.
again: imposter syndrome and self doubt, burnout, difficulty setting boundaries, and navigating career transitions. And what I've noticed is that when we tackle the imposter thoughts first, everything else becomes easier to untangle.
Mm.
And that realization really sparked a whole new direction for me and my business. So I dug further into the research, did more training, and earlier this year, I became a certified imposter syndrome coach practitioner.
I
And
love
looking,
it. I just, here's
yeah,
a clap for you, Sonia. Sorry, not to
thank
interject your
you.
story. You go on because I'll have my say when you're done.
Well, thank you. No, I just wanted to say that looking back, it kind of feels like every step of my career has led me here. I know what it's like to doubt
Mm.
yourself, even when on paper everything looks fine.
Right.
And I know how exhausting it is to feel like you constantly have to prove yourself. And that's
Mm.
why I'm so passionate about helping healthcare professionals to manage imposter syndrome and build authentic confidence.
I love that. I was going to say exactly that, I actually hadn't heard the detail of your journey. I mean, post our sort of interaction when we worked together for the organization in Sydney, I had watched some of your career moves on LinkedIn. But to
Mm.
hear that how at every stage of your own pivot journey, you had to encounter the same monster, shall I call it?
Yes.
And how, so that for me is just, it's so authentic because the work you do, it's emerged out of your own life experience, but also what you've witnessed others struggling with.
Correct.
And, what I do is helping health professionals to pivot. And so the biggest obstacle is exactly that. This it's sort of our identity being tied to our profession, and then the moment you want to step out of that feeling like an imposter, and which is why I thought a conversation with you would be so rich, is really to help people understand that it's almost a natural part of change and evolution. The two questions I have for you. The first is maybe in simple terms. I think we hear the term imposter syndrome, imposter syndrome. Break it down very simply for the audience. What is imposter syndrome? And how can we recognize imposter syndrome? Some may think it's rational or irrational fears, but what is imposter syndrome and what are some of those signs and symptoms?
Yeah, what a great question. Thank you, Diane. So, imposter syndrome, that monster, as you called it, is really when capable, qualified people doubt their own abilities and they think that they are going to be found out as a fraud, even when there is plenty of evidence that they are good at what they do. But instead of owning their achievements, they'll often put them down to luck or timing, or I was just in the right place at the right time, or someone else helped me. And the term was actually first coined over 40 years ago
Oh,
by
wow.
two psychologists. Yeah, they were studying high achieving women who were incredibly successful, but they still doubted themselves. And actually, I have to say that the name imposter syndrome can be a bit misleading because it's not a syndrome or a medical
Right.
condition or an official diagnosis.
Yeah.
And that's why some people actually prefer to call it the imposter phenomenon or
Okay.
imposter thoughts. Because at its core, it's really just a pattern of thinking and feeling. Because there's no truth to it. It's just
Right.
something we make up, really.
Yeah.
And it is common. It's very common. Some studies suggest about 70% of people experience it at some point. And it shows up across various professions and usually in high achievers. Michelle Obama, Tom Hanks, Jacinda Ardern, Serena Williams, even tech billionaire Mike Cannon-Brookes, they've all spoken about their own imposter feelings.
Wow.
So if any of your audience have ever felt this way, they are in very good company. It's also more common in hierarchical professions like healthcare, also
Right.
law and the military. And we also know that it shows up more often in women, but not exclusively in women, and in people from minority or underrepresented groups.
Right.
So that's basically what imposter syndrome is. What are the signs or symptoms, or how do we know that we have them? I think if I had to pick one sign, I'd say perfectionism is imposter syndrome's best friend. It's both a cause and a coping mechanism. You set impossibly high standards for yourself, and then when you can't meet them because nobody can, it just reinforces that feeling that you are not good enough. So it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Another big one is what I call the procrastination overwork loop. So this is when you put things off, you procrastinate because you don't quite feel ready, and then you have to scramble at the last minute to meet the deadline. Or sometimes, and this is something I can be very guilty of, I can over-prepare endlessly to avoid being found out,
Oh,
But
my
either
goodness.
way, it is exhausting. And of course, ironically, over-preparing or procrastinating just hurts our performance over
Oh,
time.
gosh. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
certainly relate to the procrastinating one. And then, like, the pressure's on the last minute. So,
Yes,
yeah.
I
And
think many of us can. Yeah.
I mean, I've faced imposter syndrome at so many points in my career. I think just spot on. For me, this is so valuable because you sit and you can just really stew in those doubts. And as you say, what if people find me out? It's like, find out that I'm a
Yeah.
fraud, that I can't do this work. And yet, as you say, your track record proves that you can accomplish these things. And yeah. So, what are some of the, I don't know if it's coping strategies? What do we do when we encounter these signs and symptoms? And yeah, what strategies can we employ to overcome imposter syndrome when we encounter it, Sonia?
Yeah, such an important question, Diane. The good news is that several strategies can help. So I'll mention a few of the key ones, and sometimes you have to kind of try what works for you, but I'll mention
Right.
a few of the ones that I noticed work for most people. And the first thing is basically to talk about it. Recognize that this is how you are feeling, and then talk about it with a trusted colleague or a dear friend or a mentor or a coach. And you'll be surprised how many high achievers feel the same way as you. The second thing I'd say is don't believe everything you think and feel. So just because you think it doesn't make it
Yeah,
true. So
true.
challenge
Yep.
those automatic negative thoughts. What is the evidence for what you are thinking? And what might be the evidence against what you are thinking or believing? The third thing I'd say, and this is kind of hard in today's social media age, is stop comparing yourself to others. Focus on your own goals and what matters to you. And I guess one of my favorite tips is focus on progress, not perfection.
Right.
Because growth happens when we step outside of that comfort zone. So we
Perfect.
have to take action before we feel ready. And then also when we have taken action, to celebrate those wins along the way. I also often recommend to my clients that they keep a confidence file, where you write down your
Oh,
achievements, your
wonderful.
strengths, compliments that you receive, positive feedback you get from others, even cards from patients or clients and so on.
Yeah.
Because if we do that, over time we start seeing the evidence, the
Right.
recurring themes, and
Right.
that's when we begin to internalize those achievements. And that's how we start building authentic confidence and taming that imposter monster. There's something else, Diane, that I often tell my clients. Two F words come before the C word. So feedback and failure before confidence. So
Right.
if you actively seek feedback on your performance, and if you see failure as a chance to learn and to grow, not as a proof that you are incompetent, that is
Yeah.
how we build confidence.
Yeah. I love that. Before I started the podcast, or just when I was about starting it, I decided to get expert training in how to start a podcast and what are the things that need to happen. And so I signed up for a group coaching program. And one of the things the coach said was one of the key lessons, she's like, data over drama. For the North Americans, data over drama. Because sometimes, if someone leaves you, let's say, a not so nice review, or someone said, oh, you spoke too loudly, or you laughed too much, or whatever that might be on the podcast, it's easy to dramatize that, to internalize that negative feedback. But all it is feedback. How can you use that to improve? And so I love what you said is the feedback and failure, build confidence if you take it in the right way. And so many times we're too scared to fail or even to ask someone, how did I do at that talk? Or what do you think? And we're not ready for the constructive criticism often, but it's what forces us to grow when we look at what we can improve. So yeah, I love what you said, Sonja, even when you said do what feels right for you, because what's right for the next person or what feels right for someone else may not necessarily feel right for you. And also the sort of the external metrics of success. You mentioned in your own story how you took up a role at some point as the CEO of the Cancer Society. Now, I guess the average person would think, wow, you became a CEO. Like, how can you leave that role? This is what society thinks we should aspire to, the highest echelons in organizations. But if it doesn't sit right with you, this is out of alignment, or something doesn't fit with your values or your personality, then it's okay to say, hey, this is not for me. I'm going to seek the things that I know I will bring me greater fulfillment. And so just in your story and what you've shared, Sonja, I think there's just such nuggets for the audience to take away and reflect on as they sort of think about their own journeys, and where they may be at, because everyone's at a different phase, right? And I can
Yeah, yeah.
hear in your, sharing your work that you're so passionate about it. But why is this work so important to you? I know it's important, I'm not discounting it, but what is it about this work in particular that you feel is so impactful for health professionals in particular who want to pivot their careers or simply want to just break out of the limitations of imposter syndrome.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me that question, Diane, because I'm passionate about it because I have lived it. I
Right.
know what it feels like to keep achieving on paper and yet still feel like you are not enough. And I see so many brilliant, capable clinicians holding themselves back for that same reason. I'm also passionate about the work I do with early career medical specialists because we know that when clinicians thrive and when they lead well, it benefits everyone around them.
Totally.
So it's not just about the doctor, it flows on to their patients, to the junior doctors that they teach, and of course the teams that they work with. And for your audience, for healthcare professionals thinking about a career pivot or life beyond clinical practice, I'd say this: imposter syndrome keeps you stuck in your comfort zone unless you manage it.
Yeah.
It can hold you back from applying for new roles, or as you say, going after something, that's more meaningful and more right for you. Or it also holds us back from considering opportunities that would stretch us.
For sure.
And the truth is that every time you take on something new, those imposter feelings can flare up again, like they did for me, and they still do when I try new things like this. Um, you know the saying, "New levels, new devils." Have you heard
Oh,
that?
for sure. Yes, I've heard
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So career changes and taking on leadership roles or moving into non-clinical work, all of those can trigger our imposter feelings. And that's why I often think that managing imposter syndrome is a journey, not really a
Right.
destination. But it does get easier over time, and you learn what works for you, and you learn how to manage it. And I think unless we are able to manage our imposter syndrome, it's harder to make that career pivot that people want to
Very
make.
true. Well, for the audience, I think they'll be excited to hear this announcement, Sonja, that you will be presenting at our upcoming Pivot Roundtable Summit in October. So if you want to hear more insights from Sonja Cronjé about imposter syndrome and just career insights, then join us on the 10th and 11th of October. The link will be in the show notes, and yeah, we'll continue the conversations and about other things related to career pivoting, even outside of imposter syndrome. If you have questions, bring them to the summit and we'll be happy to address those. So Sonja, if someone's listening and they resonated with everything you said and want to work with you, how can they reach you? Are you open to taking on new clients? Just
Oh,
if they want more of your wisdom and guidance in their own journeys, how can they find you?
you are very kind, Diane. The easiest way to find me is through my website, upwardstrategy.com.au. All my contact details are there. I am at capacity for 2025, but they can join a wait list and be the first to know when doors open again early next year.
Oh,
I'd also say
fantastic.
that to stay in the loop about what's next, I'm hoping to do a course on imposter syndrome next year. So if people wanted to
Fantastic.
receive occasional insights or some more practical strategies for managing imposter syndrome, they can also sign up to my email list at upwardstrategy.com.au/insights.
Oh, wonderful. So,
Yeah.
we'll include that link in the show notes as well. So, anyone wants to follow your journey, and we'll include your LinkedIn profile as well, Sonja, so they can see the work you're doing. Because I think this is such a critical piece. Where I'm sitting, I'm encountering people who are desperate for change, who know they're called for more, or perhaps they've just reached the end of their season in clinical practice and now they want a new growth cycle. They want something fresh, a fresh new challenge. They want to advance in a different area. But this is one of the very first hurdles where they get stuck. And so if we can help them overcome that and then help professionals and chart out a course that's aligned to their passions, their strengths or their interests, then that's how we can work together to help our community, because I like what you said, because when health professionals thrive, whether that's early career medical specialists or allied health professionals, it translates to clinical care. Even if you're in a leadership role, if you're in an industry role, But if you're serving there passionately, you can come up with creative solutions and ideas that can benefit healthcare ultimately. So whether within or outside of clinical care, I think it's so important. I used to say when I was at the university, who's caring for the carers? We're training students to care for patients and to fix broken health systems, but when they are overwhelmed and burnt out, what resources do we have for them? Because if they are broken, how can they fix,
Yeah.
broken systems and people who are not well? So, yeah,
I
the
could
work
not agree
continues.
more. I could not agree more with what you just said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been wonderful to chat with you about this, Sonja. Thank you so much for the work you do. I think it's such important work, and I'll certainly be following your course. I might take it myself, to deal with the demons that sometimes crop up in my head when I'm trying to, go to the next level. But yeah, salute to the work that you're doing. And I think testament to the fact that, it's so valuable that you're booked up for 2025. So watch this space, get your name on the wait list if you want sort of help navigating imposter syndrome that may be keeping you stuck. And limiting your career potential. So, Sonja, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you for your time on Life Beyond Clinical Practice. And we look forward to continuing the conversation at the Pivot Roundtable Summit and even beyond. I value your contributions to this platform.
Diane, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a joy to reconnect after all these years and to have this conversation with you. And thank you for the kind words you said about my work. And I really admire what you are doing to support people through their career pivots. It's such a gift to anyone standing at a crossroads. And I know I would have loved to have someone like you in my corner during some of my own big transitions. So thank you for creating this space and for inviting me to be part of it. And I look forward to your summit in October as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sonja.
Thanks, Diane.